The film begins with a guy named Sangman who takes a large number of pills, intending to end his life. Sangman collapses on the floor, only to be discovered by the clerk, who does chest compressions and forces him to vomit the pills out. Following that, Sangman attempts to leap into the river, but is saved by the police. He does, however, glimpse a white light, and when he awakens, he finds himself in the hospital. As soon as he gets up on the bed, a mysterious smoking man appears next to him, but when a nurse arrives to take the cigarette away, she instead removes it from Sangman's hand. After that, he is escorted to visit a psychiatrist, but neither the nurses nor the doctor can see the smoking man following him. After telling him he'd been dead for a few seconds, the doctor inquires about his hypothetical companion, believing there is just one. However, Sangman begins to hear sobbing at eternity, so he unlocks the doctor's cupboard and sees a crying woman there, apologizing repeatedly. As Sangman starts to panic, the doctor summons the nurses to take him away. Sangman places his hand inside the cabinet to demonstrate that he is hallucinating. However, Sangman only perceives it because he is caressing the crying woman. Sangman is escorted back to his room to rest, but in the middle of the night, he wakes up to use the loo. That's when he notices a grandpa crouched on the front desk, blowing papers off to cause them to fall on the floor, forcing the nurse to bend over and pick them up, exposing her curves. When Sangman steps back, Grandpa emerges behind him, accompanied by smoking man and crying woman, and he rushes back to his room, only to discover the three of them hovering above him with inflated heads. He eventually realizes that these individuals are ghosts, but when he learns that they would be using his body from now on, the shock is too great for Sangman, and he passes out. When the doctor awakens him up the next morning, he learns a fourth kid ghost has joined the gang. When he gets on the bus to leave the hospital, the spirits follow him, but it's difficult to communicate to them since it seems like he's talking to other passengers. Sangman is supposed to see a shaman after reading an ad for one, and this is how he learns that individuals who come back to life are often able to see ghosts. He also discovers that he will be unable to die unless he eliminates them. Sangman travels home with the spirits following him, and when he arrives at his flat, he realizes this is the first time he has ever had guests. Sangman used to be concerned about his health, but now the ghosts are enticing him to partake in some of life's pleasures. Grandpa forces him to drink, smoking man forces him to smoke, kid forces him to eat junk food, and crying woman forces him to attend the citizens' meeting, where he also yells. This new existence begins to wear on him, and Sangman frequently wakes up with diarrhea or the want to vomit. He tries to tell the spirits to leave him alone, but they don't listen and choose to watch TV instead. Because of their cold influence, his flat freezes over one night, and Sangman burns his finger by attempting to touch such ice. He returns to the shaman and begs a solution, and the shaman explains that if he wants the spirits to leave, he should assist them complete their dying wishes so they can find closure. When he returns to his flat, he offers his assistance, and Grandpa agrees to go first. Meanwhile, in the hospital, Nurse Jong-Yunsa bids farewell to another deceased patient before checking on an ill youngster named Jong-won and listening to his heart. She then travels to the hospital roof, knowing that Jung Joo-won, her father and a victim, spends time there gambling, which is not permitted. Back in town, Sangman is escorting Grandpa to every shop in an attempt to achieve Grandpa's request for a camera. None of the cameras he sees are decent, and when Sangman questions him about it, Grandpa says he needs a very unique camera and knows who owns it. Sangman becomes enraged, not understanding why the ghost did not say it before, but Grandpa adds that ghosts can only answer questions, not supply their own knowledge. Chunchun is the one in possession of the camera. Grandpa occupies Sangman for a few eons and demands Chunchun return the camera, but he is rejected, so Sangman thinks they need a kinder way. They go to him in the middle of the night with a present, but it turns out Chunchun is a cop and they're disrupting a stakeout, so Sangman is detained. At the police station, Grandpa takes over again and threatens to reveal some of Chunchun's riddles, so the officer agrees to give him the camera back in order to keep him quiet. They carry the camera to the hospital where its true owner, Pantsu, is being treated. Yunsa comes by to check on Pantsu as they are having lunch with him, and Sangman falls in love with her at first sight. Grandpa observes this and urges him to hit on her and ask her out, but Yunsa simply ignores him. Pantsu checks the camera after they depart and smiles when he realizes the initials he carved years ago are still there. The following day, Sangman brings the kid to see the latest massive robot film, fulfilling his ambition. When they arrive at the theater, they notice Yunsu and Jongwon, so Sangman approaches her and asks whether she likes animation, which she affirms. They had a fantastic time watching the movie, and when it's finished, Kid demands that Sangman purchase him a gift. When they notice Yunsa leaving Jongwon alone for a while, Kid seizes the opportunity to control Sangman once more and forces Jongwon to give him part of his sweets. Yunsa, on the other hand, returns just in time to take Jongwon away. They pursue them to a restaurant, where Kid possesses Sangman once more to force him to consume many bowls of noodles, which affects Jongwon but also causes him to vomit in the lavatory. After lunch, Yunsu apologizes to Sangman for Jongwon's attitude, which is explained by the fact that he can't eat much due to his cancer treatment. Sangman notices on his way back home that a movie store is having a large deal because they're about to close up business. Meanwhile, Yunsu returns Jongwon to the hospital, where the other nurses congratulate her. Ju-won has inquired about her. Her father is having a disturbance when she goes to check on him. So she summons the physicians to care for him. It's still late at night when Sangman begins collaborating with Smoking Man on his wish. They break into a car pound and uncover a drunk man sleeping inside a vehicle. This man begins after them in his car, yelling about his wife, who has been neglecting him, and he believes it is because she has a boyfriend. To win him over, Sangman urges him to stop running, and the guy, in turn, brakes the automobile just in time. After assuring him he has psychic skills and can see ghosts, Sangman begins to act possessed, while Smoking Man exhales cold breath on the car windows. Now that the guy has speculated him, Sangman strikes a deal. They'll get his wife back in exchange for the automobile smoking guy desires. They start following the man's wife around until they get to the hospital, where they overhear her talking to Yunsu, who confirms she only has around 5 months to live. Sangman, now despondent, hides on the stairs to smoke a cigarette while Smoking Man explains that this woman is pregnant, but unlike her, the baby will survive. That's when Yunsa spots him and tells him to quit smoking because the man's addiction caused his wife's lung cancer. She is now refusing the treatment because she wants the baby to live. Yunsa also tells him that Jongwon loved meeting him and hands him her business card with her phone number. Sangman then returns to the vehicle pound and tells the man what he's discovered. At that point in time, the wife appears, and when the pair reconciles, Sangman obtains the automobile that Smoking Man desired. Sangman doesn't know how to drive, so Smoking Man possesses him and drives them to the beach, which is Sangman's first experience. After emphasizing how nice it was to have a house before vanishing, Smoking Man forces Sangman to remove his costume and plunge into the water, which is frightening at first because he doesn't know how to swim. Smoking Man teaches him how to float, and soon they're having so much fun that the other ghosts join in. They are unexpectedly stopped by the police for littering, but because Sangman does not have a license, he gets investigated. When the officers interview Sangman at the police station, he says he's always been afraid of vehicles, but when Smoking Man takes over, he says he used to be the best taxi driver. The cops get tired of him and tell him to phone his next of kin, but because he doesn't have any, Sangman calls Yunsu instead. When she arrives at the station to bail him out, she hears his monologue about his life as an orphan, and how he's never had the opportunity to have a solid career and start a family, which is his dream. She checks his heartbeat by placing her ear on his chest, feeling awful for him. She then drives the cab while telling him she's the polar opposite of him. She has family, but they are a burden to her. Yunsa says farewell after presenting him some as they get at his building. He eats candy to avoid taking it from children, and he uses the chance to give it to them. All the animation tapes he bought, even though he claims he only had them lying around the home. She feels strange leaving with a large box in her arms, but Smoking Man begs Sangman to take the box and carry it for her to the bus stop. Sangman watches her go on the bus, but suddenly changes his mind and chases after the vehicle to climb aboard as well. Now when they're seated together, Sangman asks why she checked his heart like that previously. Yunsa claims it's an old tradition and that Sangman's heart is powerful, so he reciprocates by placing his ear on her breast as well. Yunsa catches Ju-won gambling again the next day at the hospital. Her father assumes she's gone on a date because of the gorgeous costume as she removes their belongings, but she doesn't respond to his queries. Meanwhile, Sangman hears the final request he must fulfill. Crying woman wants to cook supper for the people she likes, which is only him and the other ghosts, though she does want to invite one more person. They arrive at the hospital to speak with Yunsu, but before he can extend the invitation, they are interrupted by Ju-won, who begins asking unpleasant questions about their relationship and expresses his desire to see his daughter marry before he dies. Yunsa tells him to go, and Sangman reminds her that she should not be harsh to her father. But this just fuels her rage. Yunsa claims that he has an idealized view of family and is unaware of how horrible they are. It is possible that she has difficulties with her father that he is unaware of and that she does not want him to know about. He is no longer in her life. Sangman, upset, goes home and donates a large portion of his belongings to charity. Include his television. Later that night, the ghost of Ju-won appears at his flat, demanding that he send a message to his daughter. Sangman attends the burial and tells Yunsu that he can see ghosts and that her father is remorseful, but she cuts him off with her own narrative. Her mother had been ill as a child, and she would check her heartbeat every day. She had to watch her mother die alone because her father refused to return, which makes her dislike everything to do with him and forces her to leave before hearing the remainder of the message. Outside, she receives some solace from Panos, who hands her his camera to return to the person who brought it. Sangman returns to his flat and takes crying woman grocery shopping. Later that evening, when they're preparing dinner, Yunsu comes over to drop off the camera, so Sangman invites her to dinner. Yunsu enjoys the food and attempts to converse, but each of her queries is answered by a spirit inhabiting Sangman, prompting her to wonder who the real him is. This inquiry rattles him to his core, so he tells Yunsu the remainder of her father's message. He felt very fortunate to have her with him when he died, and he concealed a present for her in the hospital at the location where they usually met. Yunsu admits he's serious when he says he can see ghosts, but this is too much for her to process given all the death she sees at the hospital every day, so she orders him to go. Sangman, who is upset over losing her and not knowing who he actually is, tells the spirits to leave now that all wishes have been granted and goes to bed. He wakes up the next morning to find the flat deserted. He goes to the shop to buy a quantity of briquettes, which he then lights inside the cab to kill himself with carbon monoxide. He can't stop thinking about Yunsu, who is now working at the hospital and dealing with the devastating news that Jongwon has also died. She walks to the roof for some fresh air and discovers the blanket with the cards his father used for gambling, but most notably, there's also a box containing a pair of gorgeous shoes for her, which is the present Sangman had described. Sangman arrives around midday with some leftovers from the night before to share. They walk to a bench for lunch, and Yunsu informs him that large shocks can occasionally create amnesia. Thus Jongwon forgot about his family the day he found out he was about to die, and only remembered them at the very end. She apologizes for last night, but he assures her that everything is okay now that the spirits have vanished. He tells her about his briquette stunt and admits that thinking about her gives him a purpose to live. They then switch to lighter chat topics while eating. Yoon soon compliments Sangman's kimbap for include parsley, which isn't a common combination, and Sangman clarifies that his mother always thought parsley was excellent for your health and that he used it instead of spinach, freezing as he realizes what he just said. Sangman is astonished to realize that all of the ghosts had been his family. Crying woman was his mother, smoking man was his father, kid was his elder brother, and grandpa was his grandpa. Sangman goes away, moaning, as he realizes that all the desires he granted were his family's way of spending their dying moments with him. His mother had always wanted him to accompany her to the market. His brother had saved him from candy-stealing terrors and promised to take him to the movies someday, and his father had oversaw a beach trip on his newly acquired taxi so Sangman could see the sea for the first time, an event for which his grandfather had taken his neighbor's camera so he could take photographs. The automobile crashed on the way to the beach, killing everyone but Sangman, and it was one of the officers on the scene who took the camera as it dropped from the car. Sangman, like Jongwon, had lost his memory as a result of the great surprise. He returns to his flat and summons the spirits, who return and affirm they are his family. Mom admits to leaving him alone, but says that they will always be there for him and encourages him to keep living. A montage of years of photographs shot alone reveals that the ghosts were always with him. He simply couldn't see them, and they were the ones who made his water disappear the day he tried to consume all those medicines. They also appear in the photographs he takes for his wedding to Yunsu and the birth of his first child, and he is astonished when his kid asks who the people in the photographs are, and the movie ends. Subscribe for more videos like this. Turn on notifications and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.